Welcome to Trudge the Road. It's sponsored by Caron Treatment Centers. Caron is a nonprofit leading provider of drug and alcohol addiction treatment with treatment facilities in Pennsylvania, Florida, Texas, and offices in Bermuda, Boston, New York, Philadelphia, and Washington, D.C. They can be reached by calling 1-800-854-6023, or you can go to their website, caron.org. That's CARON.org. We're your hosts. I'm Rich, a recovered drug addict.
My name is Jerry, and I'm a sober alcoholic.
Jerry, let's start the show by you letting everyone know why we do the show.
Trudge the Road is a radio program dedicated to folks like ourselves who suffer from the disease of addiction to drugs and alcohol. Family members, we know how you suffer, and we know that you got a lot of questions. Our goal here, try to answer as many of those questions as we possibly can, and with the grace of the good Lord above, find a solution to this incredible dilemma, the disease of addiction.
All right, coming up, we have a very special guest, Bill M. And Bill has been sober for well over 40 years.
Right.
And he has an amazing story that he's going to be sharing with us. He's also an author. He's a playwright.
And an actor.
He's an actor as well. He's got a couple of DVDs out. But one of the things that he wanted to focus on today, and he will, coming up, is a website called aafortroops.net.
Very interesting thing they've got going here.
Yeah, very interesting. As a matter of fact, you can go to this website, and basically what it is speaker tapes.
Right. So you don't have to be necessarily in the troops. They send these to the troops overseas, but anybody can just go to that website, and there's some really wonderful speakers. It's a meeting just a click away.
Yeah, and we're actually in talks with him on getting Trudge the Road up there as well. So it'll be another avenue in which you could catch this radio show. But either way, very excited about having Bill M. coming up here in just a few minutes. Do want to remind you of our website, which is trudgetheroadradio.com. It's a place you can go to catch our Twitter feed. You could follow us on Twitter. You could become a Facebook follower as well, Trudge the Road Radio. And you could also catch prior episodes, and you could get a copy of Jerry and the 12 Steps.
Please do. Please do.
Yes, we highly encourage you to do so. But in this first segment, we want to talk about the torture of mind, body, and soul. And you have some thoughts on this.
Well, the reason that I brought it up is I've been spending some time in the belly of the beast. I've been in a detox center and just talking to people as they're coming off of the drugs and alcohol. And that's really important for me to do, because I'll forget. This disease is a great forgetter, of what that is. And you use those words, and that's what it is. It's torture. It's absolutely torture. And that's where the stage that they're at right now is the torture of body. Now, these kids, and I say that most of them were under 25, were detoxing from heroin. Now, it's a horrible detox that there really are not words in the English language to describe. And that is why so many of them go back, because they know just a shot or a pill or whatever, and they won't feel this. It's the flu times 10, and the fear and the paranoia and all the emotion that go along with it make it the most terrifying experience I think I've certainly ever had. And that's why, I spend some time with these kids. I look at it this way, and really, before I tell you this story, it's none that I came up. I heard it from a speaker when I was at a conference, and he describes what it's like for us when we get here. And he makes the comparison to an alcoholic and a drug addict coming in for the first time to that of somebody who has been horrifically burned in a fire. And there's great similarities. And the fact of the matter is, when I got here, when I showed up, I wasn't feeling a lot because I was just completely inebriated. And that had been the goal for a long time, was not to feel anything. And somebody who's been burned real badly in a fire, they don't feel a lot of pain because the nerve endings have been burned, So there's no need really to give them any type of...
You're talking about after the burn, obviously.
Right, yes. There's no reason to give them any narcotic at that point. They're not in any pain. No reason to give us any. I wasn't in any pain. I was still just anesthetized. Now, as the drugs and alcohol that I was on started to wear off, holy moly, here comes that torture of body, mind, and soul, starting physically. And it is just absolutely indescribable. Now, somebody who has been burned in a fire, as they begin to get better, the nerve endings start to grow back, and what the sign is pain. That pain's a good sign. That nerve ending is growing back, and they have to know where they're getting better, so they do not give them narcotics, the person who has been burned horrifically in a fire. What they do, the docs and the nurses, is they stand right by them. We're going to sit here and walk through this pain with you. And it's a good thing because it's a sign that you're getting better. And what's synonymous with us is that is a good thing too, even though it hurts so bad. The mental and emotional aspect of this, when you begin to get better, those feelings are loose. They are tremendously magnified, and they're all based in fear. It's a terrifying situation. Now you've got the whole body thing going on, and you're just in complete terror in your head. It's just, again, it's impossible to describe, but it is torture. It is absolute torture. Now you can only imagine what it would be like if you were burned. That type of pain, it's indescribable. Our type of pain is indescribable. And what we do is the exact same thing. And it's what I was doing just this morning, was just sitting by these guys in the bed and saying, I understand your pain. And I do. I understand it. I don't have a kindling or inkling of it. I know exactly what they're going through. And I know that they're going to get better. And I sit there and walk through that pain with them. And just like the burn patient, eventually they start to get better and the pain starts to subside. And they've had all this wonderful help by these people who are just dedicated to them trying to feel better, trying to get better. We do the exact same thing here. And the body starts to get better, the detox completes, you begin to feel so much better physically. And also at this time, some of those emotions have come down to a little bit more semblance, if you will. And the paranoia and the exaggerated fear has leveled off a little bit, and you begin to feel emotionally and mentally a little bit better, and that's all in this process of us just staying there saying, we understand and we will walk you through this and let you know when you're starting to get better. And that's the thing, is we don't. We don't know when we're starting to get better. And you tell them, look at your eyes, look at your face. Things are starting to change. You're beginning to get better. And the difference between the burn patient and the alcoholic is the burn patient, when they get better, they don't go out and play with matches, and we sometimes have a tendency to do just that, and then that's our forgetter. We forget that pain that we went through to get sober, that undefinable torture of body, mind, and soul. And I haven't even touched on the soul aspect. That basically, this disease annihilates our soul. I think we're just soulless when we get here. I think that's the disease, is you've been robbed of your soul. And that's one of the first things that you get back when you get here. And you get it back before you even know it, And I think that is the circumference, if you will, of the healing process, is this return of the soul, this communication with this power greater than ourselves. Even if that power greater than myself is just the guy who's standing next to me, who is saying, I understand, dude, I'm going to hold your hand. I'm going to get you a drink of water. If you throw up, I'm going to clean it up. Don't you worry. We'll get through this together. And that's how we get sober, through this torture of body, mind, and soul. You've been through, what it's like to have to go through this.
I do.
It's awful. It's horrible, but again, it's over.
Well, one of the things you just talked about was you begin to feel your soul come back. I will tell you this, that when you're deep in your addiction, you don't realize you've lost your soul. And I didn't realize. I can tell you a little story about being at this house, this dope house where I was getting high. And I had been going there for about a year and a half. And I was sitting in this room with a bunch of other people, and we were sitting there getting high, passing the pipe around. And I remember this one girl she just looks at me and she says, "What happened to you?" I'm like, "What are you talking about? What happened to me?" She goes, "Your eyes, they used to be so full of life. And now they're dead. Yeah. You don't have, it's just, I'm looking through you." And of course, at the time, I hadn't hit step one because I was deep in my addiction. Sure. And I was like, who is this person telling me? She's sitting, I passed the pipe to you. What are you talking about? But later in life, I've had a chance to reflect on that, because when I was going at such a pace and such a clip, and it became such a norm for me to get high, that I forgot. I didn't realize that my soul was gone, that I was slowly dissipating. I was slowly getting closer and closer to death at a more rapid pace, I guess, than I am now. And
much more.
And it wasn't until I finally did get clean and that my life started coming back. And then I would reflect upon things that I did or people I met or things that were said to me, that I started to understand what she was saying to me, is that now, all of a sudden, I had some life back in my eyes. People would look me in the eye, and I just didn't realize I was losing my soul.
I worked in several treatment centers where the common practice was when you got us, when you came there, is we would take your photograph on admission. I was working in a treatment center in Louisville, Kentucky, and our office looked right out onto the parking lot. but it had those windows that were reflective on the outside. You couldn't see in, but you could see right out. And I'd sit there and watch the car pull up, and watch this person who I know is going to come into treatment in a couple of minutes. You'd see the bottle of whiskey go up and followed by the beer, and the smoke rolling out the window. You could almost hear Freebird playing in the background, and I'm just sitting there watching this whole thing. And they would come in the treatment center, and the first thing I said, we expect you to come to a treatment center drunk, for crying out loud. I'd say, it's perfectly all right if you've had a couple of drinks. Can you give me an idea how much you've had? Now, mind you, I've just watched them, and they always said the same thing. I did have a couple of beers. And say, well, your blood alcohol level is 3.1. Those must have been a couple of big beers. So what we would do is take a photograph of this individual who has just consumed quite a bit, and just put that away. Just put that away, and wait 28 days. And in 28 days, on the day that they were leaving, that they were going to assimilate into the recovering community, that's the last thing we'd do is show them that picture. And I'm telling you, it would change people. They would look at that, and that's the first thing they'd see in their eyes. There's no soul. I can see all the way through myself. And the beauty, and I think that people who are recovering now can absolutely understand what I'm about to say, is that you stay around here long enough, you let this miracle happen, you can look another alcoholic in the eye, and I promise you can see all the way to their soul. You can see all the way to their soul. That's the gift that we get for those of us in recovery who really do try to make a difference and help another person.
It's during my time out, I don't recall a lot of pictures being taken of me except for 3, and those were mugshots.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah.
And if I could just get a copy of that mugshot. I've actually looked for it because I was in a really, really bad place, and I would love to compare what I looked like then as to what I look like today, as far as the eyes go and things that I just know I was a disheveled mess, and I was emaciated beyond belief.
I worked at a place called JDAC in Louisville. It was public treatment, and bless her heart, I don't know why, that the ladies, when they were coming into treatment, felt it necessary to get fixed up, to like they're going to the club. I don't know why. Now, I do know how difficult it is to shave when you're, on whiskey and cocaine. I can only imagine what it's like to have to apply makeup. And they would come in actually with these very clownish faces because, they missed with the mascara, and it was amazing. And then to see these beautiful transformed young ladies a month later and have them look at that picture really makes a big difference. There is such a physical change that we make that it is very dramatic.
It is the torture of mind, body, and soul, our topic here in segment 1. Now, coming up next segment, Bill M. is going to be joining us, and Bill is going to be, I just want you to stick around for this because he is a very compelling individual. He's been sober over 40 years.
I don't like to use the word icon or not, but he is kind of an icon.
Okay. The iconic Bill M. is coming up here in just a few minutes. This is Trudge the Road. It's sponsored by Caron Treatment Centers. Caron's a nonprofit leading provider of drug and alcohol addiction treatment. Caron specializes in men's and women's services, as well as young adult males and females, plus a relapse program and outpatient services. If you're concerned about yourself or a loved one, call 1-800-854-6023 and go to their website, caron.org. That's CARON.org. For Jerry, I'm Rich. Bill M. coming up next here on the Trudge the Road Radio Network.
You're listening to Trudge the Road. Coming up, Rich and Jerry sit down with Bill M. Bill is an actor, author, and playwright with over 40 years of recovery. That's next on the Trudge the Road Radio Network.
At Northbound Treatment Services in Newport Beach, California, we believe that treatment is the beginning of a new way of life. Our brand signifies our own commitment to help our clients find new direction and strength on their road to recovery. Our mission is simple: to assist our clients in successfully celebrating 1 year of continuous sobriety. This mission is achieved through unique treatment models, individualized treatment plans, graduated phase systems, and exceptional staff, 12-step philosophies, and a strong alumni program. The Northbound Experience focuses on effectively delivering innovative treatment. We are located in the beautiful and vibrant recovering community of Orange County, California. The Northbound Experience takes our clients beyond treatment. We are Northbound.
Welcome to Trudge the Road. It is sponsored by Caron Treatment Centers. Caron is a nonprofit leading provider of drug and alcohol addiction treatment with treatment facilities in Pennsylvania, Florida, Texas, and offices in Bermuda, Boston, New York, Philadelphia, and Washington, D.C. They can be reached by calling 1-800-854-6023, or you can go to their website, caron.org. That's CARON.org. We're your hosts. I'm Rich, a recovered drug addict.
My name is Jerry. I'm a sober alcoholic.
Jerry, tell everyone why we do this show.
Trudge Road Radio is a radio program dedicated to folks like ourselves who suffer from the disease of addiction to alcohol and drugs. And every bit as important, family members and friends, you suffer tremendously, and we know that you got a lot of questions. And that's our goal here, is to answer as many of those questions as we possibly can, and with the grace of the good Lord above, be able to provide a solution to this incredible dilemma, the disease of addiction.
We're very blessed and privileged to have a special guest with us today.
Yeah, absolutely. One of my heroes, if you will. I've known this gentleman for 14 years, and Bill M. is here with us, and his sobriety. You stopped drinking, I think, about the exact same time I really started, and has an amazing story, which we can share. But what Bill has done that I think is so admirable for people in recovery is to take some of those attributes, talents, if you will, that God gave us, and to incorporate them back into recovery. Bill is an author, is a playwright, he's an actor, and has put together many of a performance play videos all about recovery. And what it has done is it has kind of put a face sometimes on the past and give us a little bit of a glimpse also into the future by his phenomenal recovery and his great level of intelligence. Just a very bright man who I've learned so much from over the years. So, Bill, it's a pleasure to have you here. Thank you very much for coming on Trudge Road.
Well, thank you. I didn't recognize myself in that introduction. I appreciate it very much. No, and it's a privilege for me to be here, too. I want to wish all of you great success with this program. The more information we can get out there, the better things are going to be for a whole lot of people. And you guys have the answer, or one of the answers, for a gigantic puzzle. How do we reach the people that need it the most?
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that we look for as well is solutions, providing solutions, as Jerry just said here in the opening. And one of the things that I know about you is the AAfortroops.net, which is a website which also carries the message as well.
Right. Yeah, it was a dream of ours. A fellow whose great background was in radio for years, who's retired. Well, let me back up a little bit. I'm of the class of 1970, and by this time I thought my service for our fellowship had pretty well dried up. And he called up one day, and he had an idea. And of course, he's an old friend, so I listened to the idea, and it was really mesmerizing. And that's getting our message to our troops throughout the world, on land, on sea, in foxholes, in you name it. We're reaching them now with AAfortroops.net, which is just simply tapes of actual AA speakers at AA meetings. With their permission, we've taped them, we put them on CDs, or we put them on the internet, and we send them out wherever the internet is picked up. Our biggest job right now is to get that information out. The address of the website, which is AAfortroops.net, and as soon as you get on, it's fully explained, and there's information for contacting us. And if you want to add your own 2 cents in your own story, we'll find a way to get it recorded.
That's true. It's a website really for everybody in recovery. You certainly don't have to be in the services.
Not at all.
It's some of the phenomenal stories, and as a matter of fact, my story I believe is up there.
That's right. We lead off with Jerry, for obvious reasons. That's why. It's called tit for tat. Works that way. No, Jerry is just a marvelous speaker, and he has a wonderful, engaging way of talking about both the horrors and triumphs of alcoholism, and get it all into a story that's just mesmerizing and keeps your attention throughout. We're really, really grateful to have him become one of the pioneers in this fairly new program. We have 8 hours right now, 8 hours, and on the 8 hours, I'd say we're averaging 5 speakers per hour. So we've got a lot out there, but we need more, and that's one of the reasons why I'm here today, to encourage people who think that they have a story they'd like to share, especially to our troops, to contact us. There's absolutely no cost to us, no cost to you. We'll get in touch with you, and we'll get to you, and we'll get you recorded.
Well, one of the things that I always talk about, and I think our listeners have not had a chance to hear Jerry speak, is your ability to hold an audience and the compelling content.
That's right.
Recently, I had a chance to catch Jerry at his 25th anniversary speech, and the emotions that were in that room ranged from laughter to tears at the very end, because it was that compelling and that emotional in the way that you went through it. And I think for our listeners who listen to this program and have listened to it now for the year and a half that we've been doing it, an opportunity to hear your story as you tell it is vital, I think, to anyone that wants to really capture the essence of you and what happened to you and how you got here today. So again, it's aafortroops.net.
My sponsor has a title for him. He says, "You, Jerry, are the carcass that carries God's love around." And that's your job in Alcoholics Anonymous.
Nothing like being called a carcass.
He's always been so good to me.
I've got a copy of that tape, and we sent it up to New York for our engineers to sort of work with it. It was done in not an ideal location. The taping was done not like we do it with AA for Troops, but I think we're going to be able to use a lot of it and put it on another one of the segments that we have. You know, AA was referred to a long time ago as the talking cure, and now we're sort of pushing the envelope a little bit further. We're going to make it the listening cure too. Listen to the people that are sharing their life story, and it really, first of all, allows you to identify should you have a problem yourself, and it allows you to get that glimmer of hope that we offer in AA, that no matter how far down you've gone, the road back up is made easy by people that are just willing to be out there to help you, people just like yourself.
In your experience in Alcoholics Anonymous, as you look retrospectively back, and from the time you got sober, and of course we all project and try to predict the future, were you even close at all in where you are today and what you do?
Well, no, I'm of the class of 1970. I was fortunate to be sent to AA by my doctor, and of course I was not happy with it. And when I arrived at the scene in the Boston area, the type of meetings were a lot different than they are today. And although there are still some of the groups up in New England handle the meetings the same way. You would go to a meeting location, which for us was always a church basement. And in the course of an hour and a half, you'd have another group from a nearby community would come over, another AA group, and they would put on the meeting. And in the hour and a half you were there, you might average 6 speakers that would get up and just briefly talk about what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. And you sat and you listened. And the heavy lifting, I always thought at the time that you make contact, was the 20 or 30 minutes after the meeting, where you talk with other people that were in the room about what you just heard. You had things explained to them if you didn't understand it. And of course, it was a great place to have social interaction. In those days, we used to feed people after a meeting. We'd have food available. And for some guys, believe it or not, that was the only meal they were going to get that day. And it was really a nice introduction for me. Although I said I was a reluctant bride, I'd say within the third, perhaps the fourth month, I really became, instead of in of AA, and I haven't stopped since. It's a glorious adventure. So what they're doing now with Trudge the Road, and what we're trying to do with AA for Troops, is to let people listen to people share those terrible moments in their lives and then their triumph over those circumstances. A wonderful, engaging adventure. And that's what we refer to about our times, in both alcoholism and sobriety. There were adventures. Some were bad adventures and some were good adventures. But they all led to the one thing, and that was hope for the suffering alcoholic.
If we could, without, I don't want to impose on you to tell us your story, but if you could kind of give us that moment of desperation back in 1970, and then all these many, many years later, kind of your thoughts about your sobriety and your position, if you will, within the recovering community.
Well, if I'm going to begin, I'm older than AA. I was born in 1934, about 7 weeks before Bill Wilson had his experience in Manhattan. I was born in Manhattan. So I was always very engaged with the idea that I had this proximity, although I didn't use it for a long time.
Right.
I didn't use it until I was 35. So although I knew nothing about AA until I came in, I became a a student of AA, I'd say within a year. I couldn't get enough of it when I began to understand the, well, for lack of the divinity of AA, the blessedness. I was working for a major company in Boston, and I had a fairly responsible job, and I was productive, and I was also the father of 4 children and a marriage, 15 years, and I was drunk for the last 2 years every day from 1968, attending the Rose Bowl in Pasadena, California, to the day I walked into a hospital in Boston, Massachusetts in May of 1970. My last day. I was to the point in my drinking that and nobody knew about it. It had been noticed by some of the people that I work with, but not to the point that they said something about it, but they were very cautious with me. But I became enamored, for lack of a better word for it. I sort of like the romantic idea of it, that I was crazy. Mm-hmm. That there was something about me that made me different, and it was just the way I was thinking. And that craziness finally drove me to the point of suicide. I was thinking that perhaps the solution for my problems, which were all paranoia, there were nothing real, it was just this acute alcoholic paranoia that I found out later what it was all about. But I went to see a doctor, and the doctor, through the course of about 6 weeks, came to the conclusion that I wasn't crazy. I wanted to be crazy because that explained a lot of my behaviors. He just said that I had a drinking problem, that I was an alcoholic, and he suggested I come to AA, and I thought he was crazy, but I followed up on his advice, and for the next 3 months, I came every day to an AA meeting in the place that I lived. There was no meetings in the town that I was from, but I would travel at night to different meetings. There was a couple daytime meetings that I could get to. I came and I listened, and of course I was unapproachable, absolutely unapproachable. And then finally, one night, I was back at work then. My company had given me leave to get well because I did have some value for them. But I went to a meeting in, of all places, Rentham, Massachusetts, an Episcopal church. We used to refer to ourselves as Episcaholics in those days because they were the only ones who would let us in their basements.
Yeah.
Anyway, at this meeting, it began, and for some reason, I was really fed up, I guess. I'm feeling sorry for myself. And I had no prayer life. I had no spirituality at all. But that night, I considered myself at the time an agnostic, which would be somebody that was too lazy to be an atheist. And I decided that night, for some reason, that I wasn't going to enjoy the hour ahead or the hour and a half ahead. And it was our custom in Boston. We had no ritual at all outside of they opened the meeting with a moment of silence. We didn't pray or anything. You just bowed your head for a moment of silence. And, of course, having no belief system, I bowed my head and looked at the shine of my shoes or the shine of my person's shoes next to me. And for some reason, I had this tremendous sense of sadness. It was just overwhelming. And I said I call it my first AA prayer. I said, oh my God, do I have to listen to this crap the rest of my life? Why me? Why me? And of a sudden, I realized, why not me? After being around AA for over 3 months, I realized that I had a lot in common with the people that had shared with me over that period. And that's when, for the first time, I realized that I was an alcoholic. I'd be one the rest of my life, and when they pulled the grass over my head, I'd be a dead alcoholic, and there was absolutely nothing I could do about that. But I could, if I chose, continue to come to these meetings and pick up some of the ideas that these people presented, do some of the things that they suggested I do, and perhaps have a pretty good life. Or, for the first time in years, I had a choice. I could get up from here, go out, pick up a drink, curse God, and die. I decided to stay, and it grew. And it continues to grow. I was at a meeting this morning. I'm going to be at a meeting in an hour and a half from now. And not so much that I need them as much as I need to just be a part of it, and perhaps the possibility somebody might ask me for some piece of information that I will be able to answer, some question. And I enjoy them thoroughly. Again, I'm hearing people, we call AA the talking cure. And I hear people talking, and I hear them talking themselves well. It's truly unbelievable.
It is a magnificent, magnificent journey. I'll tell you what, you've hit on a couple of words I'd like to focus on when we come back: divinity, spirituality, and that path that we take here to our destiny of happiness, joy, and peace. And we'll be back here in just a while.
All right. Looking forward to segment 3. Trudge the Road is sponsored by Caron Treatment Centers. Caron's a nonprofit leading provider of drug and alcohol addiction treatment. Caron specializes in men's and women's services, as well as young adult males and females, plus a relapse program and outpatient services. If you're concerned about yourself or a loved one, call 1-800-854-6023, or you can go to their website, caron.org. That's caron.org. Stick around. Jerry, myself, Rich, and Bill are coming back on the Trudge the Road Radio Network.
You're listening to Trudge the Road. Coming up, Rich and Jerry continue their discussion with Bill M. as he shares his experience, strength, and hope. That's next on the Trudge the Road Radio Network.
Hi, this is Rich, your co-host for the Trudge the Road radio program. And there's a question I get all the time, and that is, how do we catch prior episodes of Trudge the Road if we miss the radio show? And it's very simple. You just go to youtube.com and in the search engine, type in, without any spaces, Trudge the Road Radio. And all our shows will come up. We also invite you to like our Facebook page, which can be found by typing Trudge the Road Radio with spaces into the search engine. And thank you from Jerry and myself for listening to Trudge the Road.
There is a new face of recovery, and you see it in the pages of Renew Magazine and at RenewEveryday.com. Renew and RenewEveryday.com are changing the face of recovery for good. Each issue is filled with positive role models, life-affirming stories, encouragement, and ideas to help any life in recovery. Whether you're already enjoying an addiction-free life, have a loved one facing his challenges, or are considering recovery, Renew and RenewEveryday.com can support and inspire you. Join us. Check out RenewEveryday.com to learn more.
Welcome back to Trudge the Road. It's sponsored by Caron Treatment Centers. Caron, a nonprofit leading provider of drug and alcohol addiction treatment with treatment facilities in Pennsylvania, Florida, Texas, offices in Bermuda, Boston, New York, Philadelphia, and the nation's capital. They can be reached by calling 1-800-854-6023, or you can go to their website, caron.org. That's CARON.org. We're your hosts. I'm Rich, a recovered drug addict.
My name is Jerry, and I'm a sober alcoholic.
And I'll tell you, we have a great guest here. Bill M. has joined us, and we were talking to Bill just a few minutes ago. I want to get a plug-in for your website again. It's aafortroops.net. And if you want to hear speaker tapes and people really with many different stories that I think would be extremely impactful for someone who's reaching out and just trying to connect with something, you can probably find it there because, as you said, Bill, there's at least 8 hours of speakers up there. And the lead speaker, well, maybe not the lead, but the very first one that you're going to find.
It might say guy lives in a tree or something like that.
Is our co-host here, Jerry of Jerry and the 12 Steps.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you. And Bill, thank you very much for coming in and talking to us. And one of the things that I think that you are exceptional about, and it's because that you've made that spiritual connection, and I think everybody in the room has, but you can explain it. And we talk about divinity, we talk about religion, we talk about spirituality, and these aspects of recovery. And as our founder referred to it, this is a spiritual therapy for a disease.
Spiritual response.
You've been listening to Trudge the Road. If you'd like to catch prior episodes, you can visit our website, TrudgeTheRoadRadio.com, and keep listening for new episodes on this great radio station, which is part of the Trudge the Road Radio Network.
And including the word divinity, as you did before, maybe a little bit of an explanation of that aspect of how we get better.
Well, let me continue with when I said that first prayer. That was the first time I had touched the word God in years, and I didn't go back to that right away. I just realized that I belonged in AA, and God, believe it or not, at that time in that part of the world was not mentioned that often in the rooms. Nor were the 12 steps, even the big book. What they relied on mostly was coming to meetings, making commitments to go out with the group to other meetings, and talking to people that had some headwind in this program, some people that had trudged the road before you showed up, and sort of made the path open. But it was months later when doing the right thing, I should say up until that time, I had never been touched with any kind of desire to have a drink. And the day that I walked into a hospital, so maybe 6 months into the program, that left me. And that's a spiritual gift, that sense that I needed a drink more than I needed anything else. That went away. And then one day it reappeared.
Mm-hmm.
I was passing by a bar that I had been looking forward to it opening up close by the town that I lived in, and I wanted a drink. And for some reason, it really attracted me. But thank God I went past that. And I got to a meeting that night, and I talked to him. By then, I was still auditioning sponsors. I hadn't found the right guy yet that I could control. So, but the one man that did become my sponsor, I went up to him and I said, John, what's going on? I'm doing everything right now. I'm coming to meetings. I'm making commitments. I'm helping put the chairs out, make the coffee, empty the ashtrays, talk to people, a little bit that I can talk to them about recovery. And now I want a drink. It's reappeared. He suggested that, he said, why don't you go talk to this other gentleman? His name was Jim, who was an elder in the program, for lack of a better word. He had been sober for 30 years. And at one time he was a leading jeweler in that part of Massachusetts. Bought the first Cadillac in New England. So he was a guy right up my alley. Yeah. I loved a guy like this. And a real showboat. And I walked up to him after the meeting, and I said, Jim, I told him the circumstances. And he said, well, very simply, he just said, matter of fact, well, did you ask God for help this morning? But he was always talking about that. That was the one character that did mention God a lot. I said, what do you mean? He said, did you ask God for help this morning? And I said, very matter-of-factly, I don't believe in God. I said, well, that's all right. He said, fine. We allow anybody in here. He said, well, let me ask you a question. I said, what's that? He said, do you believe that I believe in God? And as there was no skin off my nose, I said, certainly, yeah, you're always talking about him. Mm-hmm. He said, well, do you believe me when I say to you that every morning for the last 30-some-odd years, I've asked God for help not to drink today? And again, no skin off my nose. I said, sure, He said, do you think he's been helping me? I said, yeah, you've been sober over 30 years. I guess so. He said, well, I'll tell you what I'll do. He said, I'll lend you my God. What are you talking about? I said, tomorrow morning, when you wake up and nobody's looking, you don't want to get caught doing it, you'll be embarrassed, Just say, who's ever helping Jim, please help me today not to drink. So I thought about it. The next morning, thank God, I remembered what he had said, and with nobody looking, flat on my back like a Protestant, I said, who's ever helping Jim, please help me. Now, I'm a very practical person, in spite of my being an alcoholic, which is sort of a crosswind. I'm very practical, and I realized that day, that night, staying sober was a lot easier than it had been the day before. For the simple fact that I had asked for help, I had burnt that bridge. I had proposed an idea to something I still had no sense of, no conception of God. I made a decision not to drink, and that built up until finally I've developed my own concept of what God is, and it doesn't resemble anything that I was raised with. And I won't go into that, my religious background, but that was the essence of spirituality. And spirituality in AA is very, very simple. It's unselfishness. That's the spiritual aspect. Honesty is spiritual. To be an honest person is to be a spiritual person. To be humble has a spiritual quality to it. To be virtuous has a spiritual quality. All that's good is spiritual. All that's bad is not spiritual. It's more material. Wanting more things, wanting bigger things, wanting more recognition, things that are not of that ilk. But spirituality is just being kind, generous, helpful. And I'll share one very brief experience to give you an essence of what it's all about. I was very standoffish for a long time in AA. I mean, I had a superior attitude because I hadn't gone all the way down. I still had the house, the 4 children, a good job, everything that I thought was successful. So I didn't mingle that much with the hoi polloi, as we used to call them. But one night I came to a meeting early, and I'm a great believer in what I call the 20 and 20. The 20 minutes before a meeting and the 20 minutes after an AA meeting is where all the heavy lifting is done. That's where you really get to know the basics of the program, interacting with people, before you leave. But I had gotten there early enough that evening to hear a fellow who was a lot like me, who had a great deal of problems in his life, all monetary, but they were horrific. I mean, this guy was in a real jam, and he was really downhearted, and he's trying to stay sober. And I overheard the conversation. I wasn't a part of it. And at the end of the meeting, when I was leaving, he happened to be at the door talking to somebody again about his problems. And for the first time as I was passing by, I touched him on the shoulder, and I said, "Easy does it." I had absolutely no idea what that meant. Still, easy does it. But I knew I wanted to say something for somebody else. And that's called empathy. That's altruism. And that's my phone ringing. So.
All right.
I touched him, and I literally had this tremendous sense of love, or however you want to describe it, that I had finally really reached out to somebody who I didn't know that much about, And it was nothing like the love I have for my children or my wife or my parents or my brothers and sisters and other close friends. This was just altruism, which is spirituality. And that's what AA is. When you go to an AA meeting and you hear somebody talking, all of a sudden you find yourself identifying with that person. That's a spiritual connection. It's purely spiritual. And a lot of people are frightened of the word. They think it has a religious undertone. It doesn't. Religion and spirituality are different. You can use religion to get a spiritual feeling, but I don't think it might lead you to religion, but it isn't the important thing. I was sober. I had moved away from Boston, and I was living now in Pennsylvania. I was in the program perhaps 12 years, and there was a meeting nearby where I lived, and I decided, it was in March, it was a beautiful day, I decided to walk to that meeting. And in walking to that meeting, I was going to a good thing, I guess. I don't know what my thoughts were. I was just taken over with this absolutely beautiful sense of peace. It was thrilling. Very short-lived, maybe less than a minute, perhaps. I had this tremendous sense of well-being, and I knew that I was walking with God, and that was a spiritual moment. And it was worth the 11, 12 years that I had waited for it to happen, and I can't wait till it happen again. And it's as simple as that. That's what AA is. AA is a spiritual response to an illness. I made a mess out of my life, I thought, up until the point that I started to do something about it. And I never thought that I'd be able to recover. I was certain, as I lost my father to alcohol, that I was doomed to do the same thing, to die from this disease. And I'd given up hope. And finally, hope has never left me, since I really used that borrowed God. It was what an asset. And that man, as far as I'm concerned, that Jim is in the highest pantheon in heaven for doing something like that. So if there's anybody listening to this program, and I hope there is.
So do we.
I'm sure there are. Please, if you haven't found that higher power, you can borrow mine. Beautiful. If there's ever helping Bill, please help me.
And we cannot thank you enough. That is Bill M., who we will have back again, because there's a whole other story and a whole lot more of information there that I know that he can share and make your recovery enriched as he has mine.
Yeah. Hey, thank you again, Bill. Really, really appreciate you being here.
God bless you for what you're doing here.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Trudge the Road is sponsored by Caron Treatment Centers. Caron's a nonprofit leading provider of drug and alcohol addiction treatment. Caron specializes in men's and women's services, as well as young adult males and females, plus a relapse program and outpatient services. If you are concerned about yourself or a loved one, call 1-800-854-6023, or you can go to their website, Caron.org. That's CARON.org. For Jerry, what, do you want to say something?
No, man. I think you're doing a great job.
Okay,
thank you for letting me
you.
be here. All right, dude.
For Jerry, I'm Rich. Stick around. Segment 4 of this week's Trudge the Road is coming up next on the Trudge the Road Radio Network.
You're listening to Trudge the Road. Coming up, Rich and Jerry wrap up this week's show with Jerry telling us the story of Pops. That's next on the Trudge the Road Radio Network.
At Northbound Treatment Services in Newport Beach, California, we believe that treatment is the beginning of a new way of life. Our brand signifies our own commitment to help our clients find new direction and strength on their road to recovery. Our mission is simple: to assist our clients in successfully celebrating 1 year of continuous sobriety. This mission is achieved through unique treatment models, individualized treatment plans, graduated phase systems, and exceptional staff, 12-step philosophies, and a strong alumni program. The Northbound Experience focuses on effectively delivering innovative treatment. We are located in the beautiful and vibrant recovering community of Orange County, California. The Northbound Experience takes our clients beyond treatment. We are Northbound.
Welcome back to Trudge the Road. It's sponsored by Caron Treatment Centers. Caron's a nonprofit leading provider of drug and alcohol addiction treatment with treatment facilities in Pennsylvania, Florida, Texas, and offices in Bermuda, Boston, New York, Philadelphia, and Washington, D.C. They can be reached by calling 1-800-854-6023, or you can go to their website, caron.org. That's CARON.org. We're your hosts. I'm Rich, a recovered drug addict.
My name is Jerry. I'm a sober alcoholic.
And our final segment here, you want to tell us the story of Pops.
Good old Pops, man. You'll appreciate this. An absolutely wonderful guy that had such a significant role in me being clean and sober today. And it was the reason I'm thinking of it is we lost Pops 10 years ago today as we're recording this. And it's been on my mind all day. It's just an amazing man. You know, we all had a lot of bad habits when we were drinking, you know, bad things that we would do. And some of them we're very ashamed of. Pop's bad habit was robbing banks. You know?
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
A real bad habit. You know, and what he'd do is, you know, this is in the '60s, mind you, and is sit in a bar and just get inches before a blackout, and then go stick up this bank. And
how successful was he?
He wasn't very successful. Then as a career, he was called a lumper. And that is a helper to a truck driver.
Right.
So he'd stick up a bank, then he'd go to the truck stop, get on a truck, go to the next town, drink up that money, and then do this and move on to the next town. He got away with this for a long time. But as you know, the feds get really, really, really upset when you rob a bank. Sure. You know, they hate that worse than anything. So it was a matter of time, and eventually they caught up with Pops, and they were very upset. And they nailed him for 4 bank robberies. He'd done like 20, but they had him for 4, and this is a federal charge, and they gave him 25 years federal time.
Right.
Now the difference between federal time and what you may get in a state penitentiary is this: there's no parole. If you get 25, you do 25. You get 10, you do 10. So Pop's going away for 25 years. Federal penitentiary in Atlanta is where he ends up. And when he's there, his cellie had gotten sober, had realized at some point that he was an alcoholic, and that was the real problem while he was there. And Pops kept listening to him, and then he told him, they've got coffee at these AA meetings, and Pop, I'll have some of that,
Right.
and went, and just that was his motivation, actually. And then he began to hear his own story. He began to hear these other prisoners talk about doing the exact same thing and realized, I only acted out when I was using. I only acted out and did these terrible bank robberies when I was drunk. And I only did it for one reason: to stay drunk. Maybe I'm an alcoholic. Maybe that's the problem. And he continued to go to those meetings and finally accepted, that was the problem.
Right.
And became sober in Alcoholics Anonymous within the federal penitentiary system in Atlanta. And again, he's still going to do 25 years, but he did get sober, and he did learn a little bit more, got a little bit of education, and became a counselor's assistant within the treatment program, which was in the federal pen. Now, he's been in there, I think it was 11 years or 12 years that he'd done and he was a trustee. In other words, he wasn't locked down, and he was going to mess. He was going to eat. And he's walking by a building, and a boiler, what a boiler room is?
Sure.
Boom, exploded. The boiler exploded. And he says, and I believe him, that he has really no recollection of it, but what he did was, after this explosion, he ran in there and he pulled out 2 officers and 2 inmates who would have definitely died had he not done that. It was a complete and total act of heroism. And again, he said, it just happened. Well, of course, now he's the hero of the administration. He's the hero of the inmates. And Pops, you are the best. And again, he took it very humbly in his demeanor on receiving all of this acclaim. Well, things take time in the federal penitentiary and with the federal government. And it was a little over a year after that had happened. It took the paperwork process that long. And Pops is sound asleep in his bunk. And they like to do things in the penitentiary system at night as to not to disturb the other inmates. And he said he's just dead asleep, and all of a sudden, bang, 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 there's a kicking at his bunk. And he wakes up and he looks at it's the warden. And the warden says, "Are you Eugene Page?" Is his name. And of course he knows it. He knows that's what. And he said, "You have to acknowledge that you are, because we have a letter to read to you." And he said, "Yes, I'm Eugene Page." And he said, "Sit up to show respect for the author of this letter." And the author of that letter was a man named Ronald Reagan, who pardoned Pops.
Wow.
What?
And said, "You are free because of your act of heroism, your unselfish behavior within the penitentiary system." They started the paperwork right after Pops had saved those folks. It took that much time, and he was pardoned by the President of the United States. And they told him that, and he was absolutely in shock. And they said to him, "Pops, you can just relax. You can check out and, go in the morning and process." He said, "No, I'm out of here right now. Where's the door? You might change your mind." And then, so Pops left, and he came to the healing place in Louisville, Kentucky. And for years and years and years, what he did was guys who were coming out of the joint, he would help them because he knew their language. He knew their demeanor. He knew the problems they faced as they assimilated out of the penitentiary into sociology. And the good Lord knows how many people are alive and healthy today because of what Pops did. And then in 97, I think, Pops went to the doctor. By the way, I should tell you, Pops lived on candy and cigarettes, and coffee, and he was getting older. And the doc told him, he said, "Pops, you got some real problems here, and it's going to limit the time that you're going to be with us." And basically gave him 6 months to live. And I heard this. I wasn't living there in Louisville at the time, and felt terrible. And then in the year 2000, 3 years later, I'm visiting Louisville, and I walk into the Ice House, this clubhouse, AA clubhouse, and who's sitting in the corner smoking away? Pops, And I said, "Pops, how the doctor said you only had 6 months. What did you do? What did you change?" And he said, "I quit going to that doctor who said I was going to live 6 months. That's what I did." And it just goes to show that when God's through with you, he's through with you. And when it was time for Pops to experience his heavenly transition, he did. And that's just a great story of recovery in Alcoholics Anonymous.
That truly is. This is Trudge the Road. It's sponsored by Caron Treatment Centers. Caron is a nonprofit leading provider of drug and alcohol addiction treatment. Caron specializes in men's and women's services, as well as young adult males and females, plus a relapse program and outpatient services. If you're concerned about yourself or a loved one, call 1-800-854-6023, or you can go to their website, caron.org. That's CARON.org. We'll dedicate this last segment to Pops.
Good old Pops. Eugene Page, I love you. I know you're up in heaven listening.
For Jerry, I'm Rich. This is Trudge the Road Radio.
You've been listening to Trudge the Road. If you'd like to catch prior episodes, you can visit our website, trudgetheroadradio.com, and keep listening for new episodes on this great radio station, which is part of the Trudge the Road Radio Network.
At Northbound Treatment Services in Newport Beach, California, we believe that treatment is the beginning of a new way of life. Our brand signifies our own commitment to help our clients find new direction and strength on their road to recovery. Our mission is simple: to assist our clients in successfully celebrating 1 year of continuous sobriety. This mission is achieved through unique treatment models, individualized treatment plans, graduated phase systems, and exceptional staff, 12-step philosophies, and a strong alumni program. The Northbound Experience focuses on effectively delivering innovative treatment. We are located in the beautiful and vibrant recovering community of Orange County, California. The Northbound Experience takes our clients beyond treatment. We are Northbound.
Thank you for listening to Trudge the Road. The opinions expressed in the show are those of myself, Jerry, my co-host, Rich, and our guests, and not necessarily those of the Caron Treatment Centers. For more information regarding the show, go to our website, trudgetheroadradio.com.